Carpe Piscis by Tygermine, read by LMX Mabella. Part 2. You know, it's times like these that I wish the bad guys would appear to monologue dramatically, so I can at least see what I'm up against. Malfoy mused as he sat on the cold floor, pegged to the stone wall, watching the room beyond. You sound like this happens to you often. It comes with the job, doesn't it? And what exactly is your job? The cold was making Hermione a little touchy. Hunting things, saving people. From accuser? Malfoy snorted in derision and shook his head. I'm a freelancer. I'm sure it pays well. I don't charge people for saving their life, Granger. That's just tacky. How can you afford this lifestyle? She demanded to know. I'm a Malfoy, he replied matter-of-factly.
I'm a Malfoy,
she mouthed mockingly. That's not an answer. It's the only answer I'm giving you. Then answer me this. She knew this was the only chance she had to get any answers out of him. A truly captive audience. Who are you hiding from? Who says I'm hiding? It's the second time you've brought that up. He winced as he adjusted his position. Malfoy, you're using a gun instead of a wand, a car instead of apparating. You've gone full muggle. Why? His mouth pulled into a sneer. I thought you'd be ready to throw a parade in my honor. Maybe once upon a time, but seeing it in action, it makes me sad, actually. I don't need your pity, Granger. Not now. Your brain, however, the one that solves puzzles, that's what I need right now. So let's put a pin in my personal life and get out of here. You're right, I'm sorry. I need to distract myself until I figure this out. Playing 20 questions with me is not how I distract you. He teasingly waggled his eyebrows at her. Context, Malfoy. Lead suggestions will not get you anywhere when we're both cold, dirty, hungry, and trapped. You forgot angry. I'm very angry, Granger. That goes without saying. She got up and walked around the cell for the umpteenth time, rechecking it for weaknesses. I agree with you, though. I could do with a shag. A bad guy monologue? Monologues get bad guys caught, came a third voice from the dark recess of the other room. So then don't monologue, just let us go, and we'll not hold a grudge, bargained Malfoy. The voice snorted. Oh no, you, Malfoy, you hold grudges. So we've met, ventured Malfoy. The voice sighed. Unfortunately. Hermione gasped out to laugh in surprise at the words and sent an apologetic look towards Malfoy. I mean, he's not wrong, she felt the need to point out. You, I'll deal with later. He shook a finger at her. Come on then, let me see who I'm dealing with. Yeah, no, I have a better idea, replied the voice. Suddenly the two were bound together by a length of a rope with a pop, disapparated, landing on a boat tied to the dock at the resort. Where is your wand? Hermione asked as their ropes were released after the captain magicked the boat out onto the middle of the lake. I lost it years ago, he replied shortly. Silence settled onto the boat as the water lapped at the wood. The boat was sinking around them. We need to swim, Malfoy stated. We have no idea what's below us. The water was already lapping at their calves. If we swim, maybe the thing will be distracted by the boat, giving us a chance to get away. And develop hypothermia, thus causing us to die faster. Granger, I swear to God, you better get in that water and start swimming, or I'll... You what? Kill me yourself. We can't swim. We'll get eaten. You're the magical creature expert. Surely you can tame the beast. I don't even know what it is. The water was up to their knees, leaving them little choice. Okay, said Hermione, taking big gulps of air as the cold overtook her body. No splashing or jumping. We need to slide into the water and slowly paddle away. This is going to suck so much, Malfoy complained, but followed her lead as she slid along the broken side of the dinghy and grabbed some driftwood. They were maybe a yard or two from the dinghy when something reared itself out of the water and attacked the remains of the dinghy, shattering it to bits. What was that? Stuttered Draco beside her. It looked like a really big carp, she gasped. Come, kick softly. Don't disturb the water." Malfoy kept quiet and stayed beside her, kicking his long legs as if doing a breaststroke, keeping his feet below the water. Something big slithered below them, pushing them upwards. "Oh fuck, oh fuck, oh fuck," Hermione chanted, her words fogging up in front of her. "Shh," he cautioned. "Nearly there." There being the nearest bank to the river, lit up with flashing blue and red lights. A fishy tail whipped below them, the tip of the fin catching Hermione on her knees. She froze. "No, don't stop. Keep swimming," whispered Malfoy. I can't." The water swirled below them as the creature overtook them and turned back, swimming towards them, breaching the surface, its mouth wide open. "The wood!" cried Hermione, turning the driftwood in her hand until it stood vertically, bobbing in the water. He copied her, bracing against the creature, and it bore down on them. Less than a foot from them, it dove below the surface, causing waves to splash over them. "It's toying with us," exclaimed Malfoy. "Keep going." They were now maybe 20 yards from the beach, with the creature constantly swimming under and around them, surfacing every few feet to repeat its mock attack. A large spotlight lit up on them from the beach. "Over here!" shouted Malfoy, swimming faster, his driftwood abandoned to hold on to Granger instead. In the distance, they heard a boat engine start up. "No, they can't come. It'll destroy the boat," she protested. "I'm willing to take that chance," he snapped and began towing her towards the noise of the boat engine. He felt a tug on the hand holding Hermione, and when he glanced towards her, he saw the hand disappear below the surface. "No!" He dove below the surface, hands frantically reaching to catch her. He swam until his lungs felt like bursting. He surfaced quickly, gulped in a large breath of air, and dove back down again. He opened his eyes, but he couldn't see a thing. The lake as black as the sky above them, the icy water feeling like needles stabbing his eyes. Malfoy didn't stop diving under to find her until he felt arms lock around his waist, pulling him from the water. He struggled against the rescue, shouting Hermione's name until they pulled him over the side of the boat. "I'm sorry," said the deputy. "She's gone." Hermione woke up in a cave. Although this one did not have iron bars, which was already a plus in her book, plus being alive was a definite bonus. She rolled over and coughed up the last few vestiges of lake water. Then she threw up the rest of the water. Or she was seriously hypothermic at this point, and honestly, she was too tired to care. Water splashed near her feet, and she raised her hat to see the creature's head breach the surface. It shuddered and shook itself, throwing droplets all over her. She didn't want to ask if anyone was there. That's how horror movies went wrong. Instead, Hermione rolled onto her stomach and pushed herself to her feet, swaying slightly. She turned to the creature. "What was that all about?" The creature lurched from side to side. "Pulling me into frigid water is not a game." She shook her trembling hands, bright red and covered in scratches from the driftwood. Closing her eyes, she took a deep breath and let the quiet of the cave envelop her. As she searched for a spell she'd read once in a book a long time ago. Her mind conjured the pages and she followed the instructions, her fingers stiff and unused to the manipulations required. Light pressed against her eyelids, letting her know the spell had worked. 10 points to ancient Persia, she crowed half-heartedly. With the help of the mage light, she was able to do a proper inspection of the creature. It looked like a much larger version of the carp her father would sometimes catch when he went fishing. Bottom feeders, he caught them and usually threw them back into the water. "You're not magical," she murmured to it as it bobbed near the surface. "But how did you get so big?" It flopped its head this way and that. "How can he control you?" She lifted her hand as if to stroke it, but she had no intention of going back in the water. The carp seemed to lose all interest in her and sank back into the depths of the lake. Hermione used the mage light to survey the cave. It had a flat roof with stalactites hanging from it, some low enough that Hermione had to duck around them. The walls glimmered in the light and seemed to form a solid length that wrapped around the whole area. The entrance that the carp had brought her through must be underwater, as there was no opening on the lakeside. Part of the wall opposite to where Hermione woke up threw a shadow, suggesting an opening. Hermione crept towards it, each step carefully navigating to loose stones and uneven floor. As she stepped towards the shadow, she felt a soft breeze against her cheek and had to bite back an excited squeal. She settled for a small victory jig instead, which was how she ended up confounded and wrapped in robes again. "Why didn't it eat you?" Rough hands grabbed at her cheeks and jerked her head back painfully. Hermione blinked a few times to lift the daze from her mind. "What?" Her tongue felt swollen and a headache was settling in her temples. "It was supposed to eat you." "And him? Why didn't it eat you too?" The fingers dug into her scalp, pulling her until she hissed in pain. "It was full?" she gobbled. "Bullshit!" The hands released her head roughly, causing her to hit against the wall behind her. "It was big enough to consume you both." The wizard was pacing in front of her, and she had a chance to really examine him. He was American from his accent, and just out of his teens based on the pitiful mustache on his upper lip. He wore a cloak that Hermione hadn't seen on wizards in a long time, old-fashioned, black and long. The breast pocket looked as if a school badge had been ripped off of it. The wizard stopped pacing and pulled his wand from his sleeve and pointed it at her. "You were not supposed to be part of this. It was all for him." "Malfoy, that man murdered my family." Hermione resisted the urge to roll her eyes. "Look, I'm the last person to wax lyrical about Draco Malfoy. In fact, I have a list of unsavory names for him, but murderer is not one of them." "You don't know him like I do," the wizard sniffed. "But that's fine now. He's dead. Now you can die too. I don't need any witnesses." "Why not just obliviate me?" The wizard blushed and became even more agitated. "I never finished my schooling. Never got to the complicated stuff. Because of your family. Because Draco Malfoy allowed them to die." Okay. She licked her cracked lips. "I'll talk you through the charm. Just drop me off in town when you're done, okay?" The wizard gave her a worried look. "You sure?" "Yes, without my memory, I can't tell anyone about you or what you've done. Raising the fish, feeding it the young children, planning Malfoy's murder." He paled at her words. "How did you know that?" "This has been a long con for you. I still can't understand how you got the fish to grow so big." "I didn't," he shrugged. "Pollution runoff mutated it. I just found it." "That makes sense. Now about the spell. You need to get the wand movements just right." The wizard looked at his wand in his hands and waved it around as if testing his mobility. "Right, so what's your name?" "Ben." "Okay, Ben." Hermione kept her voice soft and soothing. "You need to draw a rune with it. Now start at 6 o'clock and flick it upwards in a straight line. When you get to 12 o'clock, you need to do an elongated S down the center. Got it? Show me." Ben practiced the rune a few times until he perfected it. "Excellent work," Hermione said, trying to keep her voice calm. "Now for the words. Are you ready? Aim just above my head until the memory begins to rise up out of it. Then you need to lasso them into your wand. Ready?" Ben nodded and bit his lip. "Repeat after me. Tadi al-Sama." He repeated the words and gave a few practice swishes of his wand. When he felt ready, he stood over Hermione and waved his wand while intoning the words. As his wand finished the rune, an unseen force pulled his wand straight up, past his head, to point at the ceiling, and a huge beam of light shot out of it, crashing through the roof. Ben didn't have a chance to react before a rock fell from the roof, catching him on his shoulder and knocking him to the floor, where he hit his head and passed out. Hermione pushed herself against the wall, hoping her stunt didn't cause a complete cave-in. Something struck the side of her head, and she fell into darkness. "Not enough to just annoy me. Oh no, you had to go and collapse a bloody cave over you, and don't think for a second that gets you out of this. I will resurrect you myself and kill you." The words echoed through Hermione's head, giving her something to cling on to. "But no, you're the bloody expert. Expert at what exactly? Suicide missions? They don't pay you enough for this nonsense." She followed the words up and up and up, the darkness around her fading until she felt as if she was pressing up against her closed eyelids. "Potter will hunt me down, you know, claim it's all my fault, arrest me and throw me in Azkaban, as if this was my idea. I don't like you very much, but your death will not be due to me. She wanted to take a deep breath, but something was blocking her throat. She tried to swallow, but the obstruction stayed put. Hermione began to panic. Why is that machine making such a noise? Is she waking up? Someone tell me something. Mr. Malfoy, you should wait outside. Hermione, it's fine. Calm down. She felt her jaw being pushed open and the obstruction slide out of her throat. She took a deep breath and fell back into the darkness. Just for my sake, I need you to wake up. Hermione, it's Jill. I'm so sorry for making you do this investigation. Please, doll, wake up. Super, if you ask me. No one likes lime jello. Hermione came back to herself and stops and starts, like waves crashing on the beach, then pulling back into the ocean. Almost there, she told herself. Open your eyes. Her eyelids felt welded shut as she tried to blink them open, when suddenly they opened. They closed again a moment later, so she forced them open again and again until they stayed open. The light was dim and she wasn't able to make out where she was, just a grey-pressed board ceiling above her. She tried to move her hands, but her one hand was trapped by something warm and soft. She moved each finger as much as she could, tapping them and bending them. Hermione tried to lift the hand not being held, but it made every muscle in her body protest, which seemed to wake her the rest of the way. Hermione turned her head carefully, the muscles in her neck stiff and a throb in her temples loud. She had to blink a few times, because sitting beside her, holding her hand, was a sleeping Draco Malfoy. A rasping sound escaped her throat as she tried to talk. When she tried to swallow, her throat made an odd clicking sound around her swollen tongue. She croaked. For... He didn't move, so she wiggled the fingers that he held. It took a while, but he finally stirred. The moment between sleep mussed and wide awake was a moment she'd remember as long as she lived, as that Draco was someone she'd like to get to know, she thought. Granger, finally, you've been asleep for days. Really, for a workaholic, you do take the piss when it comes to being booked off sick. His words were snide, but his tone was playful and almost tender. She croaked again. Water? He let go of her hand to pour a glass of water and held it out to her. She frowned at him. Oh, right. He found a few switches, which levered the upper part of the bed up until she was sitting up. He then held out the cup to her, frowned when her hands flopped uselessly on the mattress before holding it gently to her lips so she could take small sips. After the lake water, this was pure bliss for her, soothing her throat, tongue, and removing the stickiness that pressed her cheeks to her teeth. Not too much, just little sips. There you go. Malfoy softly directed her until she was done. He placed the cup on the bedside table and rested his elbows on his knees. You're in a lot of trouble, by the way. We found you with a dead boy. They are talking manslaughter charges. I keep telling them it was self-defense. He looked her dead in the eye. Which leaves you with two choices, by my reckoning. One, you go back to the ministry and spend at least a year doing paperwork and interrogations about this clusterfuck. He dropped his head for a moment, letting it hang low as he debated something with himself. Or option two. He raised his head and caught her with his silver look. Join me. I got the car fixed. I have a rather large inheritance that I have no way of spending in my lifetime, and I am in the business of saving people. Do? The word hurt her throat, and she cleared it a few times before continuing. Do I have a third option? Countless options, actually. He smiled wanly. She reached out her hand until he folded their fingers together. Option 2 is looking rather appealing, to be honest. Let me sleep on it, he huffed. Granger, you've been asleep for a week. Time waits for no man or woman. Time can kiss my ass. I need another nap, maybe some food, and then I'll let you know my decision. I can buy you 2 more days before Mercusa descends. We'll be long gone by then. She smiled and drifted back to sleep. 2 weeks later. So everything is sorted? Yeah, but Miney, I'm definitely putting this in your favor tab. What a mission to get done. I really appreciate it, Harry. Are you completely sure about this? Hermione glanced over at Draco, who was sitting at the small motel table cleaning his gun whilst humming along to some pop tune on the radio. As if feeling her gaze on him, he looked up and gave her a small smile, which she automatically returned. Yeah, I think it's the best decision I've made in a long time. Okay, just don't get either of you killed. I'll try my best. Love to everyone there. Bye. She hung up the phone, motels being void of flu connections, and tossed it on the bed and dropped onto the mattress beside it. A few bullets that were lying on the bed rolled towards her, and she picked one up and began to fidget with it. So you're in the clear? He asked, his eyes on the job at hand. As much as I can be, she sighed. What a mess. Look, Ben was a very angry young man who didn't have all the facts. Like I said to the investigating Auras, his family had been attacked by a newly turned werewolf. He arrived home just after I killed it, and he ran off before I could explain, because he thought I was the killer. I know. Hermione rolled her head slowly, letting the muscles pull and stretch. But I still feel bad about killing him, even if it was an accident. The roof shouldn't have collapsed like that. It just proved how much more power he had. If only he had someone to help him. Draco slid the various gun components back into place with metallic clicks. It's done now. All we can do is try to find and rescue others like him, he said, standing up and holstering the gun by the small of his back. Grab your coat. I'm taking you out for dinner. I saw a little diner down the road. He shook his head. I'm taking you out for steak dinner. Why? She paused, sliding on her coat. Because I want to make it a proper date. A date? Her eyes widened. He smiled at her words. Yes, I'll even walk you to the door afterwards and hope to earn a good-night kiss. Hermione smiled brightly, grabbed Draco by his leather jacket, and pulled him in for a breathtaking kiss. Or we could skip dinner, she suggested, once they'd run out of breath. He shook his head. I'll need my strength for afterwards. He gave her a soft peck on her lips. Come along, Ranger. Food now, orgasm later. He stepped away from her, taking her hand, and escorted her to the newly rebuilt Mustang. Promises, promises, she teased him as they locked the hotel door and headed out for their first of many dates. The end. Thank you for listening to Carpe Piscis by Tygermine, read by Alamix Mabella. If you would like to stay up to date on upcoming chapters and stories, you can follow me on Spotify, YouTube, Instagram, Tumblr, or AO3. Stay tuned for more spooky content.